Hey everybody, this is Renee from Chez Renee Sparkles. I'm coming to you today from my sewing room, and I'm going to show you how to make a bowl cozy. So let's get sewing. I'm going to turn the camera over here so that you can see my workspace. There we go. First, I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use for this. You're going to need to mark some fabric, and so there's different tools you can use. They have a light and dark. This is a chalk, and it just has a little roller on the end that will take the chalk dust and mark it, so you have a light and a dark one there. They also have one that is Mark Begone, which washes out with water, or disappearing ink. And then there's also this called Taylor's chalk, which is a light and a dark, and it's just like basic chalk, and you just take it and run it along what you're using. Also have several different rulers here. One, I do rotary cutting on most of my projects, and so one is a big one like this, and it goes all the way. It is a 6 by 24. And then that's probably the one I use the most. And then I also have this, which is 1 by 6, and I use this quite a bit, and for this particular project it is very handy. Now, I don't use a lot of pins or clips, but you certainly can. So you could have pins or these little clips like this to clip your projects together and hold them in place as you're sewing. Also need a rotary cutter. If you're going, you can cut this with regular scissors if you want, but the rotary cutter is something that at this point I'm very practiced with, and it's very quick and easy. It is an extremely sharp tool, so if you do use it and you're not familiar with it, please be extremely careful. You unlock it this way, you pull the handle down, and that exposes the blade, and you cut. As soon as you get done, no matter how many times you have to go ahead and lock it again, because that blade doesn't care whether it's cutting fabric or you, and it will slice right through you. I've had a scar for a while from one of these. So this is what we're going to be making. It's a bowl cozy. You can put your bowl down into the cozy. It's this right here. You set your bowl down in there. You take the bowl and everything and set it into the microwave. You heat your food up, and then when you go to take it out of the microwave, you already have basically your hot pad in place to take your food out, and it'll help protect your hands. Now, the materials that I use, the batting, which is this right here, it's like a quilt batting, and then the fabric, all of that I use is 100% cotton. And also the thread that I use, this is what I get, and it is also 100% cotton thread. It's best to use the 100% cotton in everything if you're going to use it in the microwave, because if you use a polyester or some other type of material, it could possibly catch on fire. So when we don't want to do that, we're doing this for a good thing. So this pattern is one that I found free on Pinterest, and it's happyhourstitches.com. You can see that right there, and I will be posting a link in the comments below. So we're going to get started with our step 1. You need 2 pieces of batting, and they're cut in 10-inch by 10-inch squares. It's hard to see. And then 2 pieces of fabric, 10-inch by 10-inch squares. Now, you can use the same fabric if you want to, but I like to use 2 different types, so it's kind of like coordinating together, just to give it a little bit more interest, and it also makes it reversible. And to me, it makes it a little bit prettier. So step 1 is you cut the 2 10 by 10 pieces of fabric and the 2 10 by 10 pieces of material. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to take it and put it in your machine, your sewing machine, which I have right over here, and you're going to do a stitch from corner to corner to make an X in it. Now this one I've already done, and on this one I actually have one stitched, but I don't have the other stitched yet. But I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So I've put the tip of that square with the batting and the fabric together, and the fabric, the wrong side of the fabric goes against the batting, and the front side of the fabric is up where you can see it plainly. Now what I do is I just hold the point of my fabric here and I sew across, and like I said, I've already sewn one. And when you're sewing this second line here, it's good, as you see I'm holding my hand down like this, and what I'm doing is I'm keeping the fabric flat, because if you don't do it that way, it can kind of creep up when it crosses this line right here, and it could form a wrinkle. And you just go straight across, just like that, and it's just that easy. All right, my little snips, that's another important tool that I have and use constantly in my sewing room, to snip the little threads off, because I like to snip threads as I'm going. All right, so now we're going to turn back around here to our work surface, and so I have these two pieces that are already ready to go. So your next step is to take your two pieces of fabric like that, and each one you're going to fold in half. You're going to take, and you can use any ruler you want. This little ruler right here is the perfect thing, in my opinion, to use for this, because you can just lay it on the fabric just like that, and you can make your marks very easily. I like using this little tool, and you just put a little mark right there. You're going to go 1 inch in from the fold and 2 inches down from this side seam right here where it's folded. So I put a little mark right there. You can see that. And then you take your ruler. It's going to be a little bit hard for me to do this backwards. And you lay it right where the mark meets the side there, and where the mark meets the side there, you lay it, and you just draw you a straight line right across there, just like that. And the reason for these lines like this is you're actually going to be, you're making sort of a corner that you're going to cut off, which is going to form this flat piece of material into a more rounded piece. So, and see, that's how you do it on each end. Now, as you can see, I've already marked those sides there as well. So then what you do is you take it and you just sew right across this little line that you've done. You sew right there, and you sew, and as you see, I didn't put the mark on this one, but you sew right from one point to the other. You do all 4. So you fold it first this way and put your marks, then you fold it this way and put your marks. So now you've gone and you've sewn across each one of your 4 marks. Another thing is you want to be kind of careful not to get like a wrinkle in there, because if you get a big wrinkle in there, then it will be sewn in and it'll show on the outside of the bowl. Just little, those are just little kind of tips to help. So then with these little flaps, little ears there, you're going to trim them off. I use this ruler again as well, and you're going to cut a 1/4 inch. So I find the 1/4 inch mark on my ruler. Again, I use this. I put that 1/4 inch mark right across to where I stitched, and then just trim that off. I do that on each one. 1/4 inch. And yes, I know I'm not locking it in between, even though I just told you to do that. If I lay it down and don't pick it right back up right away, I do always lock it for safety reasons. So now you have this shape like this, where you've got all of those trimmed off. Okay? And you're going to do both sides like that. So you're going to wind up with two things. You're going to have one side and then the other side. So then you're going to join those sides together. You are going to put them facing right sides together. This is where I do use my pins now, because you are having to sort of manipulate the material as you're sewing it in the machine. Also, a little trick that I learned is in your stopping and starting point, if you'll put 2 pins in, then it will make it much easier to recognize your stopping and starting point. Now, my starting point on this one is going to be right here on this corner, so I won't need 2 pins for that. But I'm going to put one right up here. And then I will just pin. You want to make sure your seams, the inside of these seams right here and here, that you match them up. You can see you match them up just like that. It just makes it look neater if you match them up like that. I put 1 pin on each side of that seam to keep it secure, so that those seams won't slide and they will remain matched up. The reason I don't like using a lot of pins is because I hate getting stuck by them. Again, I'm matching my seam. This is something, when people first see it, they're kind of like, oh yeah, that's neat. But then when they actually start using it, they're like, oh wow, that's so cool, I love it. Because you can just, put your bowl in the microwave and heat it up. And then when you take the whole hot bowl out, you already have your little hot pad sort of thing protecting your hands from the heat somewhat. And it can also be used for summer goodies. So if you were eating some ice cream or a nice cold treat in the summertime, you can use these bowl cozies as well. They will protect your hands, or help protect your hands from heat and cold. And this is not really like a real official hot pad, so I don't know that I would use them to try and pick up something out of the oven or anything like that. Okay, so I'm going to try and turn this around again where you can see. There we go, you can see that a little bit. Alrighty. Alright. So I'm going to start on this corner, and you use let's see which one. I'm going to double check this. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, this is a 1/4 inch foot on this machine. It's used a lot for sewing, and this is a nice machine. I have a button on it where I can just put what's called needle down, so the needle will stay down when you stop sewing. So I'm going to back stitch it a little bit and pull my pins out as I go to help protect the needle on my machine. So you're going to sew down to that first seam, and then when you're right in the middle, of this seam right here, you're going to actually lift your pressure foot and you're going to pivot just a little bit, and you're going to continue on down to your next corner. I know I have shortened some of the steps by doing some of this, ahead of time, but this is an easy project to do. They make really nice gifts. It doesn't really take, this would actually be a good project even for someone who was beginning to learn sewing. Also, the pattern that I have has lots of pictures and really good instructions. That's why I chose to save it to my Pinterest board. And the person that made that pattern did a really good job. Some of the patterns that you find aren't as easy to follow, and they're not as clear, but the person that did this did a really nice job. That's why that's the one I want to share with you, is the one that they did. So you just pick up your presser foot at each corner and you pivot to go straight down the other line, and at each corner you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go exactly to that seam, pick up your presser foot and pivot. You only have to pivot slightly at those seams in the middle. You go straight up to your corner, pull it up, pivot. You do want to sort of pay attention and make sure that everything, you see how you have all these layers here, and that everything is being caught by that thread all the way around as you're stitching. Now, we're almost done. We're at our last side seam, and we're going to pivot. And you remember where I told you about the two little pins? That marks your stopping point. So we're going to go up to that, and I always back stitch. It makes that seam secure. I'm going to pull this out. Trim that off, and then you have this little opening right here. You see the little opening there, and you're just gonna, what I do is I just kind of gather it up like this on each side until I get all the way to that diagonal corner seam, like that. Okay, and then you just take your fingers like this and push up in there and push that seam through, and then you can just do this and pull the ball all the way through. Once you do that, you turn it. People have turning tools and that type of thing. I like to use just a regular chopstick because it has a bigger end, not such a pointed end on it, and so you don't have to worry as much about poking through the fabric. You just want to turn it where it's like that. You don't want to try and push on it even harder, because if you push on it too hard, you could, even with a chopstick, poke through the fabric, and you don't want to do that, because then you're going to have to turn it again and resew it. So that's all the corners turned, and then The final step is you're going to top stitch it. So this part that was open, I just take that and turn it in just like that. See, I just fold it in. And this is another place where I do use the pins to hold that together. Like that. And we're just going to top stitch along here. Now, and I just take my fingers and kind of push it back like that so you can see that seam real good. You don't want to do it, you know, like that where it's sideways or whatever. You want to sort of just take your fingers and push those seams like that. And I just do it as I'm going. And we're going to top stitch, which is this right here, you see? That is a top stitch. When you go and you top stitch your seam like that, it makes it neater, more professional, and it's a good way of closing the seam. With a machine stitch, which would normally be stronger. So I'm going to start on the side where I pinned it. To go ahead and get that side out of the way. I'm going to take a couple of stitches up, and since this is my final seam, I'm going to take a couple of stitches back. This on the top stitch, I actually do it maybe slightly less than 1/4 of an inch to make sure that I have all of that caught, especially the part that was left open. And then you get to your side seam again, and you're going to just slightly pivot. It just makes it when you're doing these straight edges, even though they, you know, when they have like a turn to them or a little corner like that, it's going to make it easier. When I get down to this one, I turn it, and as I'm doing that, I just kind of pinch those seams where they're even. Put down your press your foot, and we're going to our next seam, next side seam. The side seams, they're a little bit hard because you have several layers of fabric there where you cut that seam. You cut the fabric to make the seam. Then I just kind of hold it down flat like that and go to the next one, to the next corner. Okay, turn again. I do take a little bit more time, and I do try and be a little bit particular about trying to make sure that the seams are right, and you know, make sure they're straight, make sure there's not wrinkles. There's little details like that that you can do, and I've kind of said this before when I was making the earrings out of vintage wedding cake beads from an old necklace. There's a lot of small little details like that when you're doing your work that you can do. And even though people might not be able to like pinpoint exactly, they can't say, oh, well, her seams are nicer or, you know, more tidy or whatever. But they might compare your work to somebody else, and if that person isn't quite as particular, let me tell you, anybody that knows me can tell you for sure Renee is particular about stuff. Stuff that she's making especially. My mom and my grandma both taught me that. And we're all going down to our last, back almost at our starting point now. We go all the way up, kind of cross over that little stitch, go back just backspace, just a few backspace, back stitch. I've been using my computer, can you tell? Go ahead and trim your seams off. Not your seams. Trim your strings. And see, voila, just like magic. You have a beautiful, reversible, machine wash and dry bowl cozy that can be used for hot and cold. And you just take your bowl and set it right down in there, put it in the microwave, heat it up, and pull it out. Or you get your bowl of ice cream and set it down in there in a little spoon, and you just sit there and enjoy it. You don't have to worry about your hands getting cold. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me again today. I hope you're enjoying these videos that I'm making. I'm really enjoying doing them for you and coming and sharing this stuff with you. This really spreads the joy for me. This is stuff that I so much enjoy doing, and I really, really hope that you're going to enjoy joining me in it. All right? Thank you so much, and y'all have a wonderful evening. Bye.